Welcome to the Fado Network News Review. Today, 13th of May 2019. My name is Omar Wali. I'm here with the CEO of Paradise FM, Paradise TV, Haruna Drame. He interviewed the President Adama Barrow over the weekend, and they discussed about a wide range of issues. We'll be talking to Haruna about that interview. Part 1 was released, and we'll talk about that. And you'll also be talking to Essa Bokar C, the Public Relations Officer of the OIC Secretariat. We have been informed that Gambia will no longer host this year's OIC Summit. But before all that, I will start with the papers. And the point is reporting that Gambia's bid to host 2019 OIC Summit failed. The Gambia's bid to host the 2019 Summit of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC, has been cancelled according to senior government officials who is familiar with the development and prefer to remain anonymous. The point source explained that the Gambia's failure to host the 2019 summit was as a result of inadequate infrastructure, lack of enough hotels, frequent power and water cuts, and poor communication, among others. All these combined made the Gambian ineligible to host the summit, which would have been brought together 57 head of states and kings. The Gambia's foreign minister, Mamadou Tangara, was in Niger last week, where he had a discussion with President Yusuf Mahamadou on important issues such as sub-regional terrorism. Dabo and Fabakary Tombong Jatta agree on term limit, differ on governance system. Point is reporting that the party leaders of the APRC, Fabakary Tombong Jatta, and the United Democratic Party, Ousainou Dabo, have both proposed for a 2-term limit for president, but tend to differ on a system of governance. On a rare and historical occasion over the weekend, with all registered 10 political parties were brought together by the Constitutional Review Commission to hold a dialogue on the drafting and writing of a new constitution. The leaders of the two political heavyweights expressed their views on the sort of constitution they want to see. The APRC leader Fabakary Tombong Jatta said much emphasis should not be put on term limit, as people will not vote for a person if they do not want him or her to lead them again. But he said, aside from that, he will want term limit of two if people insist on it. If the worst come to the worst, we have 2 5-terms consecutive of the course. And if you lose your first term, you don't try to again, because it means that the second term have been rejected by the people. Why come back again? And that is what I believe in Mr. Jatta said during a CRC meeting with political leaders. They also reported that arrested 15 demonstrators to appear in court today. The police have arrested and charged 15 demonstrators protesting against President Barrow's 5 years presidential mandate. The Gambia government spokesperson Ibrahim Ajik Sankari has confirmed the demonstrators, 8 women and 7 men who took to the streets without police permit to demonstrate, all were arrested at Senegambia Tourist District, highly frequent by Western tourists of the Gambia's 2016 coalition partners. The Fourier also is reporting that 15 charged and for protesting without a permit. They also reporting that the CRC engaged political parties on the dialogue on Saturday, 11th of May 2019 at a local hotel in Bakau. The dialogue aims to hear and receive opinions and contributions of political leaders and actors on the constitutional reform process, and to update politicians on some of the preliminary submissions received from the public. That's all we have for you on the papers. I will now turn to my guest, Mr. Drame. Haruna, welcome to the Fado Network.
Thank you, Omar.
How did you make it? This was impossible. We have seen it when President Barrow came in. He was, giving interviews quarterly every 6 months. But you have seen that has kind of punctuated last year. How did this become possible?
I don't know. I wrote a letter to the Director of Press and Public Relations, Office of the President, and it's been a while. We wrote the letter a few months ago, and we were finally granted. I had made several follow-ups As you would hear the president himself say at the beginning of the interview, that the delay in accepting my request was due to his busy schedule, and that was it.
Another rare thing has to do with the timing. The first part is over 1 hour, and you understand that another part will come. What makes that so? How did you manage that? How did that come about?
Well, I wanted the president to give us a historic background as to the person that he is, where he came from, what he did, the ropes and the roads that he has traveled to get to where he is. And in doing that, you will realize that it will not fit in a 20-minute or 30-minute program per se. So he was gracious enough to accept us and talk in detail about 2 hours of the person that he is, how he went into politics, all his travels, his trials, trials and tribulations as a person, and the impasse, and all the way to when he went to Dakar from Bamako. That's where we stopped for the first part, and then we'll continue from there to present-day Gambia.
Your critics said some of the issues discussed on the first part, like you talk about who he was and so on, is not important. What do you say to that?
Well, you would see that I barely respond to things like that. I think what we wanted was to have a democratic space where opinions, views can be expressed, and I can only accept that as their opinion. But I went there for a purpose, and for me the purpose has been achieved, and that is to give an in-depth view into the life of the president as the person that he is.
You went there for a purpose, and that thing has been achieved, but how important is that? Many people are expecting you to be talking about burning issues affecting the country. Instead, talking about president, talking about his primary school, how he went to Europe and he was deported, a businessman.
Well, for me, it's all related. I mean, Omar did not just fall out from the sky to be Omar Wali today. There are ropes, and there have been places that you've been to, there are things that you've done, education and experience and everything. But you will realize that we said the interview was in 2 parts. I think people were just eager for the moment to get to the hardcore element. But the second part, we'll talk about the negotiations that had happened in Dakar. And then from Dakar to his swearing in Gambia. And then we'll talk about governance issues and then the new challenges that the country is facing. That's why the interview was deliberately done in 2 parts. I think people were just in a hurry to hear it all today and right now.
Or is it another way of digging out, because some of the things he's talking about people don't know, but so that people know who President Barrow is, to know that why maybe things are he's not performing in this way, who is not acting this way because of the type of education he acquired or what he went through in life.
I'm not sure I'm at liberty to go that route with you, but what I can say is there's always a reason. Some actions or inactions that are being experienced today are as a result of what we make of that is another thing. My job as a journalist is to ask the questions and get the answers. So it's the public out there that will do those analyses, and then they can reach their own conclusions as to what they make out of it.
This was a rare opportunity. Who decided to go for? Did you do all the interview in Mandinka or in other local languages, or it's both English, Mandinka? The part 2, have you seen a difference, or it's all in Mandinka?
From the request from day one, I had proposed Mandinka. A few people asked me yesterday that the president is comfortable in Mandinka. It wasn't his choosing.
Okay.
From day one, it was my choice to do the interview in Mandinka. I know as a country, we have a huge gap between the literate and the illiterate. And I have always, as a person, wanted to advocate for the masses. And for me, to do it in Mandinka or in Wolof was the best, because then people would have understood the message better, and then the president will be a lot more expressive, and then there is no gap in translation. Because sometimes when we translate things, that's when the problems really do occur. Then meanings get lost in translation.
Let's talk about, you had a lengthy interview with him. What type of person? I know you met him several times. You were at the first press conference when he was at Bruce B and so on. But tell us the difference between that time, 2017, and now, President Barrow to you.
I met him at Kairaba. I don't know Barrow the person a lot. Okay. I know some of his family members. I don't know him that much. Let me say that first. I saw some of the comments saying he's my friend. I don't necessarily call him that. He's my head of state. He's my president. And I've met him a few times. I mean, less than a handful of times in my whole life. But what I have seen from the interview, he was a little bit more expressive. He was very relaxed. He wasn't hesitant. He was very responsive. And I think that was, that's growth for me from when I met him at first at Kairaba Hotel and when we did the first press conference coming to date. He has grown in his ability to express himself in public, especially.
Do you think if situations like this continues, we engage our leaders from from president to the ministers or at the National Assembly, the communication gap, the information that comes between, or the misinformation that we put it, or anyhow, when somebody say A and somebody say no, it's A plus B or so, will be different if we engage our people, especially at the National Assembly, sticking more into our local languages?
Listen, Omar, the radio Kankang thrives, fake news thrives, because we don't get information. It is definitely the right thing to do that every ministry, every public office should be able to have access to the media and media practitioners. I like what the CRC is doing, for example, having the likes of Seni MK Marena and a team of journalists and reporters from within, inside. This is something we should encourage from all public offices, ministries, and the head of state definitely needs to engage us, journalists, reporters, entertainers, people in the media a lot more. Then that will lessen the issue of hearsay and people speculating and or circulating rumors that are totally unfounded.
You also talk about you don't respond to all those things, but many also said you were kind of doing PR for him, you were submissive.
He hasn't paid me yet.
Yeah, he said.
Now, if he's paid me as a PR, that's a different ballgame.
Yeah, but
then I would not interview him.
Yes,
then I'll be a background person to do that work.
Yeah, but in some of this response, you were kind of submissive. That's what some of the people.
For example,
said, that when you talk about the languages, and he was like, okay, I can speak this language and that, and many other things. For example, you told him the Ndongo Banjul thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I have also noticed something like when he was deported from Germany, he was talking about that, and you were kind of submissive instead of grilling him on some of the things he said he has achieved, when actually it was not him alone, but it has to be collective effort.
Listen, Omar, I went to State House without an agenda. I am an independent person. I don't have a specific agenda that I went to State House for. My job was asking the right questions to the president. Okay. What he responds and what the public makes of that response is entirely up to the public. That's why I was there. I was not there to reach any conclusions for the president. I was not there to guide him. I was not there to protect him. I was not there to promote him. I was only there to dig out and then the analysis. This is why I thought it was a successful interview, because the public is throwing all of their opinion into it. Some negative, some positive, but that's a democracy. That's what we wanted.
What is the content of part 2? I know it's yet to be out. Just a gist of that.
The part 2 interview is not even taped yet, by the way.
What happened?
We were going to tape it.
Okay.
We had already agreed, but the recording is not done yet. So I have seen some points that people were raising, which are already part of my thinking of line of questioning for him. But people cannot expect that I am there to make him agitated or frustrate him or castigate him or put him in a corner or in a box. That's definitely not my intention or purpose.
Okay. Another thing has to do with, you talk about the importance at the beginning and looking at the age, the education when he went to Europe. Mm-hmm. Do you think is the solution to the Gambia's problem from what you have said and the plans he has for the future?
We haven't reached his plans for the future. We have not even reached where he is at as a president. We have not even, because one of the key things that I want to get, how did he even form a government when he returned from Dakar? These are things that I want to know, and I think the public wants to know. What yardstick did he use to form a government? I mean, people have certain issues that they've also raised, which I want to take him on. So part 2 should be interesting. This is what I think. It should be interesting because that's what everybody wants to hear now. Some people were asking me, why didn't you ask him about the OIC closure? Yeah. When we were taping, the OIC closure was in public at the time. So there's a lot of issues that needs to be discussed and or addressed to the head of state himself. And I think he'll be gracious enough to respond to those questions when asked.
2 years ago, 3 years ago, this kind of interview would be impossible when Jammeh was here. But today it happened, thanks to freedom of expression and the democracy. What is your...
Omar, I will not say that. I've interviewed Jammeh
no, what I'm saying,
so many times.
But back in 2015, it was impossible for you to interview Jammeh in this thing. I interviewed Jammeh too.
2015,
yeah.
I was not in this line.
Okay.
But I do know
at the beginning,
in the mid-90s
yes,
to the end of the 90s, I've had really long interviews here and there.
The reason why I'm saying is because there was nothing like this before. Like every 6 months, journalists will go and interview Jammeh and so on, one-on-one, and at the same time press conference. I'm just drawing it to a line towards journalism in this country. Are you also concerned about the way some journalists are behaving? Because we have seen last time the Minister of Information was asked to bring together broadcast media, especially some journalists, that some of the messages coming out of the airwaves are hate messages.
We have never had a specific decorum for behavior for reporters, media personnel, and journalists in this country before. We must understand that we are at a new age, and democracy is fairly new to us as well. In dealing with that, Omar, we must understand that these things will happen. They will continue to happen. We will have to now scale up and try to create a standard. And this standard is what we need to abide by. The Gambia Press Union is coming with a new code of conduct. They're coming with certain criteria and standards and expectations of journalists. We will get there. But the minister and the government must understand that we are celebrating this new freedom in the best way we know how. Some of them will be under the belt of the government, some of them will be completely opposing to them, and some of them will be what they may like or may not like. But that's the nature of democracy. They must let us continue to exercise our freedom, as it were.
What do you foresee for Gambian media in the next 5 years to come?
I think it's going to be one of the hottest industries in this country. I think the emergence of television, QTV is doing wonderfully well. Star TV is on. GRTS is also boasting. They're paying better now. They're providing better quality service. Paradise TV is there. I understand there are 2 or 3 that are also in the line coming. The Gambia is going to become a media heaven, naturally. Now, will the print media survive this? That's something that I worry about a little bit, because this little thing you're looking at, the mobile phone, is the future of media. Now, the convergence points, how are we going to do this? That may be the question, but I think it will be a thriving industry and something we should all be proud of and love.
So finally, what will be your final message?
My final message is that it's an incredible opportunity to have had an insight into the life of the president. I think for me, it gave me a broader view of the person he is. And personally, I can now put fingers as to what happened and the whys. And I think that is only possible if you get an insight of the thinking of a person, his philosophy, his beliefs, his aspirations, his person. Because decisions that we make is not alien from ourselves. It comes from within. For me, it has opened a new window into understanding policy-wise, governance-wise, the way the president behaves in certain times and in certain situations.
So if I understand you well, if certain thing comes out and the president behaves in a certain way, you wouldn't be surprised because of the interview you have and you got the insight from the interview.
I'm able to some sort of psychoanalyze as a person, and I think that's a very good exposure for me, and it gives me a window inside of the mind of the president.
Thank you so much, Haruna, for your time.
Thank you very much, Fatu Network.
Well, viewers, that's Haruna Drame, the CEO of Paradise TV, Paradise FM. And that's where we end this program today. From me, Omar Wali, and my team, we thank you so much. Till tomorrow.